Ah yes, Disney, the great powerhouse of entertainment. From the moment Walt took that first stroke, an unbeatable legacy of timeless bangers was spawned. Like Snow White, the first feature-length animated film that was not destroyed in a fire. The Lion King, the highest grossing traditionally animated film of all time. Hercules, an all-around great movie. And of course, the live-action smash hit Flubber. Each of these classics quickly becoming a rite of passage for all of our childhoods. And that had made Disney the king of them all. It was a planetary phenomenon. Everyone knew and loved the Disney brand. Nothing could stop them, not even John Carter, one of the worst movies they've ever produced. It was an unstoppable train, so to speak. But what if one day, that king of entertainment looked out upon their land and said, you know what, if no one can take me down, then fuck it, I might as well do it myself. Yes, that's right audience, Disney went from the greatest of all time to the saggy ass crack of entertainment, spewing out copious amounts of diarrhea, all at the cost to themselves and the art of film. But how did this happen? How could such a juggernaut, loved by all, ruin their entire brand in only the space of a few years? Well, ain't that a story? So come, sit by the fire with me and listen to how it all went wrong. Now, Disney are serious business, and those who sit at the top of that company must be the top dog. And from its inception in 1923 all the way to 1966, that big man was none other than Walt Disney himself, co-chaired with his brother Roy. And during this time, they released the legendary classics like Snow White, Dumbo, Peter Pan, and of course, The Sons of Flubber. But sadly, everything that is good must come to an end, and in 1966, Walt passed away, followed closely by his brother Roy in 1971. And this left a hole in Disney. Replacing the greatest of all time was no easy feat, so they searched across the land until finding Michael Eisner, a New York businessman who has Australian heritage, therefore can only be known as Upside Down Man. Under his leadership, Disney grew further with hit classics like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and the greatest film ever made, The Lion King. But that was not all that Upside Down Man did, as he went on a bit of a buying binge, acquiring studios like ABC, Fox Family, and Miramax, a company set up by none other than Hollywood's worst kept secret, Harvey Weinstein. And everything was going pretty well, until it wasn't. Board members were getting a little unhappy with the Upside Down Man because there were a few flops that were mounting on his record, like Treasure Planet and The Emperor's New Groove, which looking back is utterly unbelievable. That film is bangers and mash. So Roy Disney Jr., the nephew of Walt, began a heroic charge against the Upside Down Man, claiming that he lacked vision for the company and had corporatized Disney, losing all of its magic. And his efforts resulted in the Upside Down Man leaving Disney ready for the next CEO to take the helm. Oh Roy, my sweet summer child, you have absolutely no idea of the shit gates you have just opened. So come 2005, Michael Eisner leaves Disney, creating space for the Weatherman. Yes, that's right, the beginning of Bob Iger's regime, the man who had won it all for them, increasing Disney's market capitalization from $48 billion to a whopping $257. It's a good time, and with this revitalization of a stagnant company, Iger bought up Pixar, the Marvel franchise, and of course, Lucasfilms. It seems the Weatherman was actually the perfect fit for the company. But with these newly acquired assets come great responsibilities, and two of those responsibilities were handed off to two of the best producers in Hollywood. Marvel Studios was already helmed by Kevin Feige, who oversaw such bangers as Iron Man and X-Men. So why change what works? And as the acquisition was completed, Kevin continued on as the big man for Marvel. Kathleen Kennedy, on the other hand, oversaw such classics as Back to the Future, the historically accurate live-action Flintstones, Jurassic Park, and even served as Steven Spielberg's baked potato on the Indiana Jones franchise. So with these appointments, things could not go wrong, could they? Right? Wrong. The Galactic Destruction. Star Wars is a pretty big deal. It has spawned entire book series, holiday specials, misquoted lines, and mountains of globular cosplayers, and therefore must be treated with respect. So after the purchase of Lucasfilms in 2012, Disney wasted no time in getting to work creating the first Star Wars in a decade. And that set off celebratory riots across America. Finally! More lightsabers, more high grounds, more Star Wars! But the mostly peaceful celebrations were a little bit preemptive, as little did the world know yet, things were a little bit different now. It was not the early 2000s or the late 1970s. This was the 2010s, the dawning of the modern audience, and with that comes a lot of fucking soy milk. We need to do Star Wars Bentley at this time, reads Kathleen Kennedy to the room. You dirty males have had it too good for too long. Your stupid character arcs and extended training scenes is a complete waste of time in the modern age. Under my leadership, things are gonna be different. This time, we're going female. Okay, responds the writing room rather confused. That's actually totally fine. You see, Star Wars has never been about just male protagonists. Do you remember Leia? She was pretty integral to the originals and she was loved by many. It's not a problem. But maybe we should just try and give this new character a bit of a growth arc though. You know, continue the Star Wars traditions. What? Screeches Kathleen Kennedy. You dirty men are all the same. You want it your way. We're gonna make this new leader female or you're all fired. Kathy, calls out the head of screenwriting. I don't know why you're being so angry right now. We just told you that no one has a problem with a female protagonist. We just want to make sure that we do the franchise justice and keep to its traditions. You're fired, competent screenwriting man, rages Kennedy. I want this Star Wars to be the most defining moment for females in literally history. Even mornier than those angry Samsung dishwashers back in the 20s. This protagonist is going to be perfect in every way. Now if you excuse me, I'm off to win to the Guardian that the industry needs to do more to promote women. But what do you mean? Asked the director of character development. Aren't you a woman currently in charge of one of the biggest franchises on Earth with a career history spanning decades producing some of the most iconic films of all time? You're fired too. So Disney get to writing The Force Awakens while doing the media tour promoting their female protagonist. Because for some reason, there has never been a female in a film before in like ever. And all the while, the public were going mental. It had come, the new Star Wars. And in December 2015, that movie was ejaculated across all the movie screens of the world. And everyone fucking loved it. But as time passed, people started to think, was it really that great? A story based on a random ass woman in a random ass desert planet who can't act to save a fucking life, just so happens to be a kick-ass Jedi lady with a skill tree already unlocked and undergoes 0 montages, then defeats Kylo Ren first time, even though he was fully trained and she wasn't. But it was okay, not to panic. It was just Disney getting onto their feet. The next one will be great. Won't it? Wrong. I have had the greatest idea anyone has ever had throughout history, cries out Kathleen Kennedy to the writing room. Everyone loves Luke, right? He was the hero of the original trilogy, and the audience are literally about to pre-jizz their pants in anticipation for the next installment. So how's about, guys? And I think this could become a real trend here. Instead of keeping consistent with his character traits in the old movies, Luke is now a grumpy old man without hope. That's a great idea, calls out the room. Taking legacy characters and fundamentally changing them without explanation so they're no longer the character everyone loves and remembers is literally what everybody was asking for. Fee you, cries out Kathleen Kennedy in relief. It took quite a few practices in the mirror to keep a straight face when coming up with that one. So since you're on a roll, are there any more ideas that you have? Funny you should say that. I've got plenty, and it's definitely not a political narrative at all. How's about we get this really heroic male pilot showing putting his life on the line for the rebel cause on multiple occasions, and then get a female Karen to completely fucking emasculate him for it. Oh, and then another male character is about to do a sacrifice on himself to save the good guys who are currently trapped in a cave, and he's stopped from doing so by a female of power. Oh, and Luke drinks out a retarded giraffe's tits. Fucking amazing, cries the room. But what about Rey though? We've read over the draft script and we can't find a single scene devoted to character development or montages. What? Reads Kathy. Have I not made it clear yet that I am a woman? No, in fact, Rey is so good with absolutely no training, she bests Luke fucking Skywalker with ease and then lifts up a bunch of rocks from the ground when Luke couldn't even lift a fucking X-Wing in The Empire Strikes Back. That will end toxic masculinity to death. So come December 2017, Disney released The Last Jedi, and that small voice far in the recess of the internet just got a little bit louder. What the fuck was that? Why was there no character development, and why was there a Karen screaming at a male character for being heroic? And also, why is Luke now a grumpy old man? But little did those dissenting noises know, what Disney had just embarked on was a fundamental shift away from the classic hero's journey, and instead had replaced it with the ideology of the participation trophy. Yes, that's right, audience. The philosophy that you're already the best at everything and you don't need to struggle to better yourself. But this was all coming at a cost, as not only did Disney disregard thousands of years of storytelling structures, they also began injecting narratives against their core Star Wars consumer base. Dirty, dirty males. Which in itself is a pretty fucking dumb move. Okay, ratings, we're a little bit down on that one, calls out the chief for reason. We should really think of something special for the final episode and get those disappointed customers to come back. Has anyone got any ideas? How's about we really focus on Rey's character, suggests Commander Logic. You know, maybe we can have her turn to the dark side or something. It would be a very unexpected twist, and if we can pull it off right, it could spawn an entire new trilogy. You know, do some developing and all that. Or we could even have an exploded Death Star too as nostalgia bait. And a dagger that they find really fucking easily because they fell through some random ass quicksand by accident in middle of nowhere. Bring back Palpatine. Yeah, let's bring back... Wait, what? Who the hell is this guy? I don't know, but I like the cut of his jib, shouts Kathy. Let's do it. Let's bring back Palpatine. But Palpatine is dead. How the hell can you explain that one away? We'll tell everyone he's actually a clone, and the strong female power is in fact Palpatine's daughter. No, not Palpatine, he's the evil guy. Good, good. So they released The Rise of Skywalker, a film where they were so out of ideas, they even did a fake out death of Chewie by having him loaded onto a ship, flown up into the sky, then blown up by Rey, but it turned out he was on a completely different ship the entire time. Even though, clearly, that was the only ship there, and Finn was pointing at it the entire time. But not only was this a bucket of AIDS, it was also the film that finally busted the nut for the audience. Everyone hated it. So if that franchise is not going very well, how about the Marvel Studios division? Is that at least satisfying an existing fan base and swaying new customers? Oh boy, hell yes it was. Marvel were the kings of cinema. As soon as a new film was released, everyone knew about it. And unlike Star Wars, each of the Avengers films were consistently grossing higher than the previous one, eventually reaching the second spot on the highest grossing film of all time. Okay, so it's aging like fine wine. Nothing could go wrong, right? Just keep being consistent and you're laughing all the way to the bank. Wrong! Marvel were beginning to play the game of intersectionality just like Disney Star Wars was, and the first warning shot came in 2018 at the release of Black Panther. Now, it may come as a surprise to some, but black people have been around for a very long time. Some would say they are the OG humans, and as society evolved, a number of them became pretty big movie stars, and I mean really big. It was pretty obvious to everyone by now that the Western world had moved on from bringing race into every fucking thing they do, as Martin Luther King Jr. had worked his magic. Don't be a complete and utter dildo to other people for their immutable characteristics. Nice. But for Marvel, they absolutely fucking loved the fact that they could use the melanin levels in their actors as a way to promote their films. So begin the press tour. Black Panther is the first black person ever. Never happened before, therefore this is the best movie ever released, and anyone who disagrees is a dirty, dirty racist. While completely forgetting that Blade was a thing back in the 90s. So they released Black Panther, and people quite liked it. Fine. But something very strange was going on here, because up until now Disney had made the actor's skin color its marketing strategy, but over in China, they covered up Chadwick Boseman's face, which was a surprise as Disney were all about racial justice. But confusingly, not in China. And even worselier, this was not the first time they had done that. Yes, that's right audience. Remember Finn in the promotional posters back in 2015? Well, to sell the film to the Chinese market, they even minimalized him too, because he was black. It almost seems to me that Disney are putting profits over their own morals, which could suggest They never had the morals in the first place, especially when putting race as a selling point. But that's not all, because the undercurrents of the message was starting to rise like an unflushed turd, and in 2019, that installment was Captain Marvel, a superhero with zero personality and absolutely no weaknesses, because that would literally be a hate crime. Now, the art of storytelling requires the protagonist to have weaknesses, especially in a superhero genre. If they don't, then it would be pretty damn boring, and DC knew this all too well, as their precious little Superman was becoming too overpowered, and it was leading to boring storylines. Therefore, they had to ensure weaknesses to keep the audiences interested. Disney Marvel never got that memo, and then wrote an entire film where the strong female of power was literally a strong female of power who never struggled to overcome any obstacles in her way, including dirty, dirty white males who tell her to smile on a motorbike. And that was the weather vane for what was to come. And speaking of the weather, Mr. Bob Iger, the man who revolutionized Disney, decided, you know what, it's about time I yeeted myself out of this company by stepping down to the position of executive chairman, at the precise time that the coronavirus was starting to ramp up, which could impact their profits. And that made way for the fall guy, Bob Chapek. Now, Bobby Chapek was inheriting Disney during a time where they were trying to grow once more, but this time into the streaming sphere, a market space that Disney were very late to, but not to fear, as surprisingly, it was a fairly successful launch. All Disney had to do was create non-political engaging content that satisfied all audience regardless of personal beliefs, which is a staple of their brand. But oh boy, that isn't what happened. The 2020 destruction. Disney had a lot of absolute bangers. Under the leadership of greater men, the brand became the figurehead of great storytelling, sprinkled nicely with the touches of decent morals. But as the later half of the 2010s rolled around, Disney suddenly realised that they had ran out of ideas. Therefore, the only thing to do was to hire competent original writing teams who could conjure up new IPs and milk the sweet, sweet teat of hard cash. No, rather what they would do is dig up the graves of yesteryear, then slap their timelessly preserved corpses upon a table and fuck up everything that made them a classic. Yes, the remake era. Disney were high off the unnecessary 2019 remake of The Lion King, a film that netted them the 9th highest grossing movie of all time, and therefore were hunting for their next victim. Now, as mentioned previously, Disney absolutely loved the Chinese fellas. They would do anything to be in the CCP's favour, and so turned their gaze towards Mulan, an animated film based on a Chinese legend of Hua Mulan, a film about a female woman, a real one, wanting to be a soldier to protect her family. But as biology is a real thing and is definitely not made up, the men were much stronger than her, so she had to work extra hard to achieve her success. And she did. Bang as a mash, that's an inspirational story right there. But that's not good enough, because those ancient Chinese people were actually a total hate crime. Those China fellas got that story wrong, reads the chief of actual cultural appropriation, who in their right mind would believe a woman can't do things on her first attempt. I watched Star Wars, I saw Rey never needed that day of training to immediately be the best at everything, and now you writing hacks are gonna tell me that we have an entire film based on a female montage? That's disgusting! But that story was inspirational to many people, even young boys, replies Commander Logic. It taught us that no matter the odds stacked against you, if you have the determination and correct mindset, you will eventually succeed. That's literally genocide! Have you not seen the modern audience out there? Everyone gets a participation trophy these days, even if you come dead last. While I'm in charge, all children will never need to aspire to better themselves again. That's not a healthy message, responds Commander Logic, especially when children are molded by their environment, and this attempt at social engineering could have serious implications for future generations. This is exactly the type of toxic masculinity Gillette tried to stamp out in their advert. There will be no montages. Mulan is now a female of power with magical abilities and doesn't even have to try. So Disney put together their female of power Mulan remake, while at the same time stripping away everything that made the original good. But there was a little bit of an issue. In the real world, that kung flu had made its way across the entire planet, resulting in an utter meltdown by world governments, who decided Everyone needs to stay in their houses, they all get to have no friends, and they have to wear 2 masks. And if they refuse, they're literally killing grandma, which meant no one could go to the cinema to watch it, and that presented an opportunity for Disney. Why not make use of the Disney Plus service? You know, the streaming service where people pay Disney money to watch Disney content. Well, that simply was just not good enough, so decided the best way to release it was to charge people an extra $30 to watch it. And that was a resounding success. Everyone fucking hated it, including the movie. But there were a few eagle-eyed viewers out there who noticed something in the credits. Disney were thanking the Xinjiang government, an autonomous province in China that liked to hold indigenous Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. And that led to utter outrage. How can Disney virtue their diversity and inclusion program and at the same time thank people directly responsible for inhumane treatment of ethnic minorities? Well, says Disney, it's generally accepted in the movie making industry that you thank the local government who allows you to film in their location. And okay, that does kind of make sense. And since it was a film based on Chinese law, they wanted to get a lot of shots of Chinese landscapes. Kind of a reasonable explanation given the circumstances. But strangely, they were totally cool with filming next to concentration camps, but not in the state of Georgia, who wanted to bring in a heartbeat law for unborn babies. Legislation put forward by a democratically elected government voted in by the people. Are Disney picking and choosing social movements that they want to get behind because of money? Even if it does contradict themselves? Well, surprise, surprise audience, yes. So let's welcome to the stage ESG, the score-based system of investment that ensures all companies have their gender-neutral toilets and whinge about climate change. And this score is directly controlled by none other than BlackRock and Vanguard, two of the biggest investment firms in the world, and they fancied a big slice of that Disney pie. So for Disney to continue receiving investment money from them, they needed to increase their ESG score, and by doing so, they would need to hire based on bingo cards rather than meritocracy, and their programming would need to reflect the current social climate, even if it's literally set in space. And it was up to Disney to socially engineer the direction of the future generations through media. But let's just stop right there and go back a few months, all the way to May 2020, because something had happened. Someone had got a Derek Chauvin fentanyl overdose to death, and that set cities on mostly peaceful fires. Kind of a weird time, but the death of a drug addict couldn't possibly affect Disney now, could it? I mean, they're already fucking hating black people anyway because of the Chinese market, so why would they care about this one? Because of white people, obviously! No, not white people, they're totally evil! So Disney get the orders from the ESG masters. George Floyd died to death, and that's all white people's fault. To maintain a high ESG score, you must re-educate your employees by singling out people based on their skin color and tell them that they're dirty, dirty scumbags for being born in the wrong way. Ahem. Leaked documents from the Walt Disney Company ask employees to complete a white privilege checklist and to pivot away from white dominant cultures. The statements appear in a company document entitled Reimagine Tomorrow, Where We All Belong. The document is an anti-racism discussion guide that teaches allyship for race consciousness, according to documents published on Friday on Twitter by writer Christopher F. Rufo. The document states that the recent killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and other black Americans are part of a long history of systemic racism and transphobia. The documents also cover such topics as white privilege, white fragility, white saviors, microaggressions, and anti-racism, Rufo wrote. Blaming all white people for the actions of a few, and even then that is questionable. Kinda smells like pure fucking racism to me. And that was also noted by the internet people. Why is a brand whose only purpose is to entertain audiences and increase shareholders' wealth now telling a large majority of their Western audience that they're worthless fucking scumbags for being born with white skin? And well, could it have anything to do with the S in ESG? You know, the social engineering at the behest of the paymasters. Ahem. Socially responsible investing is an investment strategy that highlights the one facet of ESG. SRI investors seek companies that promote ethical and socially conscious themes, including diversity, inclusion, community focus, social justice, and corporate ethics, in addition to fighting against racial, gender, and sexual discrimination. But strangely, Disney actually came out of this pretty unscathed, because it actually turns out every company was fucking doing it. Yes, corporate racism from a tire manufacturer, and a beverage company, and a chain store where you buy products. Very cool, not stoking further division in society. So they get releasing diversity and inclusion pledges on their website that nobody asked for. And it was all going so well because everyone suddenly realized that the color of your skin matters more than your content of your character. But all these inclusion and diversity platitudes only resonated with those who define themselves by how many pronouns they have. Because if you don't believe in dividing people and treating them differently for race, gender, and political beliefs, you're literally Hitler. Hey, Kathy, calls over the director of privilege. You'll never believe this. What is the problem? Asked Kathleen Kennedy. Surprisingly, nothing. Remember how people were saying you totally fucked up Star Wars and you're an intersectional hack inserting unwarranted and unwanted narratives into every piece of escapism that you touch? Why, yes, I do. But did I mention I am a woman? Well, people are actually really liking The Mandalorian. They're saying that it's kind of a return to form. Yeah, Baby Yoda is a massive marketing success. We've sold so many products. What about those females of power we put in there though? Are those dirty internet people angry yet? Can I taste the male tears? Surprisingly, no as well. We actually wrote a female of power who's entirely believable because not only does she look the part, she's also a real life hardener. Great, well keep up the good work. Maybe ask Jack Black and Lizzo if they want to roll in season 3. Bring back Palpatine. Not now, mysteriously hooded figure. I sure will, Kathy. I believe we can really hit form with this one. But, oh no. Oh, sweet baby Jeebus. This is a big SpaghettiOs. What is it? That really popular actress and real life female of power, Gina Carano, she's just written a tweet. No, not a tweet. That's where all the hate crimes come from. What did she say? Tell me she accused the audience of sexism. Or it is the best marketing practice to actively insult your paying customers. Surprisingly, no. She called on people to stop the political division and dehumanization of ideologically opposed groups because we did that before and it resulted in millions of people dying. Especially the Jews. My god, Reese Caffey. Calling for unity across political divides and now appealing for peace is literally a trans genocide. Get her fired right now. There will be no bigotry here. We're a diversity and inclusion employer. So Disney fired Gina Carano for having the audacity to call for peace, and the audience absolutely loved it. Oh, it's so great to continue hating each other instead of supporting positive messages. But oh no, there has been another bit of an SpaghettiOs that Disney needs to take a political divisive stance on. Because we have reports of a Florida man doing Florida things, and this time it doesn't involve alligators or meth. Enter Ron DeFucking-Santis. Disney get political. Children, they're great little things. Not only are they barrels of unrelenting energy, they're also very receptive learners, and you can get them to believe about anything. Like that time I convinced my then 3-year-old niece that rabbits go bagurk. It was so funny, and boy wasn't she so enthusiastic to shout that one out around the house. Everyone laughed, it was wholesome content. But what is no laughing matter is teaching them sexualized content. Yeah, something that is repulsive within Western cultures. And rightly so. It takes those with morals and backbones to preserve the innocence of children. But strangely, we live in the modern age with the modern audience. Who is this modern audience? Literally no one knows, but what we do know is they love to teach inappropriate content to minors, and in some cases, use children as a form of validation of their own ideology, which, let's be honest, is just commie gobbledygook. So Florida man starts taking note of what was being taught in schools, and it turns out that there was some nonsense about, and they had stocked up the school libraries with very questionable material, like Gender Queer, a book showing sexual acts between adults and a child, Flamer, a book about young boys performing sexual acts on one another, and of course, This Book is Gay, an instructional piece on how to do the gay sex. Kinda seems a little groomer to me to have this in children's libraries instead of, age-appropriate areas. Could it be that this is just an innocent mistake that they ended up in children's libraries? Or maybe we should go check in some fucking hard drives? Who knows? So Florida man takes his gigaballs all the way down to the state legislator, telling them, "Listen up, maggots, we've got nonsense telling children it's okay to identify as a frying pan and instructing them on how to perform sexual acts on one another, and also adults." Now sadly, we're not allowed to send nonsense through wood chippers, so as state governor, I am putting forward a bill to protect children from learning this utter shite at an inappropriate age, and empower parents to see what is being taught in schools. Something that only a few years ago, both the left and the right would agree upon. Children should remain innocent to the world long enough to enjoy that childhood. But alas, we do live in interesting times, and somehow safeguarding children is now a political issue. Now usually you'll expect companies just to stay out of it. It is not their fight. They just want consumers to consume and get all those sweet dollar bills. But strangely, Disney forgot to pin that memo to a notice board, as the entertainment company that built its reputation on wholesome family content for decades was now undergoing the noncification. "We must oppose this child safeguarding bill in all of its forms," cackles the ESG monster. "If you, Bob Chapek, do not publicly oppose this bill by a democratically elected Florida man, then we'll deduct 10 points from your ESG score." Now, asserts Chapek, this is territory we should not be involving ourselves in. This could seriously divide our customer base, and as the new CEO of Disney, I'm kind of hoping to revitalize the brand, not destroy it. But the investments, Bob. Think of all the investments we will give you to become politically involved. I thought the purpose of investments was to get returns greater than that what was invested. Surely becoming politically divisive will mean alienating a sizable proportion of our customers, resulting in less profits, meaning less investments, therefore even less profits, causing even less investments, and that would put the company on the brink of collapse. Doesn't make much sense to take this direction. Look, I'm not going to go out there and tell them that we at Disney are non-political. But that wasn't good enough, because this is the modern age, and expecting a brand just to sell a product is literally a trans-genocide. So the media and the activists within Disney begin hounding Chapek the money that he takes stances against the Florida man, and point to the fact that Disney have donated to the Florida legislator in the past who are now currently passing that bill. And that angered the LGTB community, who like to think they represent all gay people, although I never saw elections, and they also love pushing sexualized content onto children. But he refuses to become political on matters that do not concern Disney, as anybody would if they like money. "You have failed us, Chapek," hisses the ESG monster. "We told you to oppose the Don't Say Gay bill." Now, responds Chapek, "I was doing some reading last night and it turns out it doesn't even mention anything about being gay in that bill. It just says children shouldn't be taught sexualized content, gender ideology, or gender dysphoria issues below the 3rd grade using federal funds. And that's about it. All this hoo-ha is just the Democrats running optics for political gain. Either that, or they actually want to nonce children. Who knows? It'll all blow over eventually like everything else does. Don't worry about it, we're totally not Bud Light. What? It's 2022 and Bud Light sales are strong. The company is stable. What a weird statement to make. But shut it, Bobby boy, and listen. Don't you want to be remembered as Bob Chapek the Great? The man who led Disney to glory, not Bob Chapek, the literal hate crime. I don't get what you mean, ESG monster. The modern audience, Bobby. They're all pronouns these days, and when they grow up to be biglier, they'll tell tales to their mutated offspring that Disney did not take a stand, and that's why they can't be pansexual mountain goats with self-diagnosed neurodivergency. It's either that, or you're fired. "Oh," replies Bob. So he does the great U-turn telling the media shills, "Yeah, that Don't Say Gay bill that you guys keep telling everyone is about gay hatred, even though you're lying and all those people who are gobbling us up like Maya Khalifa at a sperm bank are too stupid to do their own research, well, yeah, you're totally right. Florida man is a walking, talking bigot factory. Disney will no longer fund anything he does. Down with Florida man." And that sent shockwaves across the United States. Disney just directly divided their consumer base. not through entertainment that they're paid by the consumer to produce, but through politically biased statements. It's kind of weird that Disney wouldn't allow Spider-Man to be etched on a 4-year-old's tombstone, citing that they wanted to maintain the innocence of their brand, but weren't willing to defend the innocence of children up to the 3rd grade, like any decent adult would, who aren't a bunch of fucking groomers. What a weird hill to die on. So a small boycott began where all those red-blooded Americans logged onto the internet and watched Kid Rock shoot cans of Disney Plus, while calling on others to leave their service. And at Disney, things only got worse, Leah. And I mean bigly worse. They had kicked the methed out alligator's nest, and now it has come back to sting them right in the ass. Because Disney were a very lucky company, as Roy back in 1967 signed a deal with an earlier Florida man to get special status within the Sunshine State. Basically, they didn't like the idea of being governed by people outside of the Disney park without representation. Something those dirty tea-dumping traitors know all too well. So a deal was struck that Disney would purchase 43 square miles of Floridian land on the condition that they could govern themselves with a special tax status. And State Governor Claude Kirk was like, alright, sounds pretty good. And so Disney built themselves the world-renowned Disneyland Florida. But with that purchase comes great responsibility. For example, not pissing off the state government with ill-informed political stances. So Ron DeSantis told Disney that they could get the fuck out of here with that little deal they've had for over 50 years and now need to pay all their taxes. And that enraged Disney because up until now they thought it was just the ESG investments that were keeping them afloat. So they need to think, how can they swing this around and start making cold hard cash again? Because they're about to lose a whole load of money. I know, says the director of Guild, how's about we open a Star Wars hotel and charge extortionate prices to stay there? It will totally be a success. How's about shoehorning an unnecessary gay kiss in a Lightyear movie, reads the not so gay agenda. You know, a children's movie where we don't even get Tim Allen to voice Buzz. Okay, that sounds fantastic, but what about an Obi-Wan Kenobi show? Everyone loves Star Wars. People literally jizz their pants just to watch a new show from us. We can even also get Ewan McGregor to come back and introduce new characters. Only if he's now a grumpy old man without hope, reads Kathleen Kennedy from the corner. Perfect, we can also get a midget Leia too, and she can run faster than fully grown adults. Oh, and we can have lightsaber fights where people get stabbed, but they don't die, as it's no longer a sword of billowing superheated plasma that can melt through literal reinforced steel doors, it's just a mild inconvenience. How's about we also subvert the audience's expectation by instead of focusing on Obi-Wan Kenobi, the show is actually about a woman of power who can't act to save her fucking life and give her a storyline that makes no sense, and when she does receive criticism, we say it was all racial abuse so Ewan McGregor can go make videos in his truck and insult the paying customer. Bring back Palpatine! Surprisingly, we kind of are. Good. So Disney get releasing Obi-Wan Kenobi, but little did those poor Disney hacks realise the modern audience that they were so desperate to please were in fact too busy protesting the latest thing, meaning the only people who actually watched the show were pre-existing fans and paid soy shills. Now, the latter absolutely love Disney content regardless of quality. They can't deep throat enough of that soggy discharge. But pre-existing fans were now starting to realise that they were being taken for a little bit of a ride here. Why call the show Obi-Wan Kenobi, then do a bait and switch where the show is actually about Reva, who by all rights should be dead? And that caused the mass rebellion. It fucking sucked. Drat, shouts the ESG monster. I thought that would win us all the money. This modern audience better show up sooner or later, or we'll have to downsize our investments. Maybe we should just go back to basics. Make another family-friendly animation movie. A film about traveling worlds. Lots of adventure, and we can inject some wholesome content in there. You know, back to our roots and all that. Oh, and the kid's gay. That's a great idea. That would get all those childless LGTVs watching it. We're so inclusive to everyone. Unless they're mildly conservative, then they can go fucking die in a fire. Long live ESG. But surprisingly, that was also a massive fucking flop as well. It seemed like the public were getting a little sick of all the diversity for the sake of diversity. And not just stories where characters just so happen to be diverse. And those public were really starting to get the inkling that these shows and films were not being written by passionate writers who dedicate their lives to telling interesting and complex stories. Rather, what they had hired were a bunch of activists producing propaganda pieces to satisfy the ESG overlords. I have had the best idea anyone has ever had throughout history. Ever, reads Kevin Feige. How's about we do another Marvel show, but this time make it a narrative against the core comic book audiences? Dirty, dirty males. I'm pretty sure that's almost exactly what Kathleen Kennedy claimed when turning Luke Skywalker into a grumpy old man. It wasn't well received, but please, go on. Okay, so we have the Hulk, right? And he's a pretty popular character. But did you guys know that there's also a woman Hulk who's also a kick-ass lawyer? Now, the real kicker on this one is in the comics, she constantly broke the fourth wall and was rather sarcastic and all that. People quite liked her. So how's about we take that story and then make it a narrative where she's immediately the best at everything without a single montage after getting infected with Hulk AIDS. And then she will whinge that she isn't taken seriously by men because she's a woman, and that's a sexism. Maybe men would take it more seriously if we didn't intend to write a show that's actually a thinly masked hate campaign against males and she actually has a grow fuck. You know, the way stories have been written for millennia. Shut up, Commander Logic. That's a great idea, Feige, but who should we get to write it? May I suggest Jessica Gal? Okay, sure. Has she ever read any of the source material? No. Perfect. So Disney get releasing She-Hulk, a show that killed an entire generation with cringe AIDS. But something interesting was going on during this time as the mask was beginning to slip. That precious little Jessica Gal was hot on the press tour informing the page shills that she actually wrote the show to be purposefully antagonistic towards the Disney detractors. And by detractors, what she really meant was people who just want to watch a show that does the source material justice and doesn't inject political narratives that purposely degrade men into a heathenistic oppressor for literally no reason other than spite. Kind of a dumb move to purposely reject your core customer base. And well, you'll never guess this one, audience. It wasn't very well received and was mocked relentlessly online. Oh, who could have seen that one coming? And by now, Disney was starting to lose some serious amounts of money. After decades of utter bangers, it seemed the audience were beginning to turn away from the once loved entertainment company, and that stock price was tumbling towards a decade low. And even then, still released the disastrous Willow, another one of Disney's leeching of better IPs. A show that was so bad and so poorly received, Disney even removed it from their streaming service because it was more expensive to host than it was to straight up write off. What a fucking disaster. And there was only one person to blame for all of this hoo-ha. Bob fucking Chapek. It was all his fault for failing to get involved in politics earlier, and the resulting division of the consumer base was all through his direction. No one else's, not even the ESG monsters. You have failed us, Bob Chapek. We chose you to lead, but your actions have cost us dearly. But you lot told me to take that political stance. I didn't want to get involved. I even have it on record that I said that. I wanted to do a good job here. You lot kept dangling ESG investments as a sword to wield against the audience. This is all on you, ESG monster. Silence! The Disney of old has died to death. Disney must now insert themselves into political issues if they wish to receive any more money from us. Didn't I tell you guys earlier that if we're losing shit tons of profits, you'll inevitably lower your investments because the company isn't profitable enough to be worth a high investment anymore? Pretty sure I mentioned that. Oh Bob. You have no idea of what's coming. ESG will be the only way to survive it. What? What's coming? Is it cake? Can I have some? No, Bobby, it is not cake, but we suggest you begin construction of a survival bunker. We're all doing it for absolutely no reason. No reason at all, just building bunkers all over the fucking place, all at once, like there's something gonna happen. That's a bit weird, but alright, I'll look into it. Anyway, gotta get going, guys. I have a plane waiting to take me to an Elton John concert. Not so fast, Chapek. It was clear from day one that you wanted to increase Disney's revenue and refrain from entering political spheres. For that, I'm afraid your services are no longer required here. Yeah, Bob, get the fuck out of here. So in November 2022, Bobby Boy gets fired straight out of Disney. But strangely, Bob Iger made a miraculous return out of literally nowhere to become CEO once more. Now I like a conspiracy more than the next guy, because half the time it's just tomorrow's news slightly early. But maybe Bob Chapek was actually set up as the fall guy for the COVID years when Disney were going to lose revenue, something Iger didn't want on his record, and they just needed an excuse to yeet him from the company once everyone suddenly realising that queuing to get into a supermarket and then eating with a mask on and getting 5 boosters but you'll still definitely catch COVID and suffer from it was utterly retarded. But then again, being paid $20 million to be the fall guy after only 2.5 years as the CEO kinda smells like a fucking sweet deal to me. So it was back to form, the revitalized Bob Iger, the man who bought Lucasfilm and Marvel Studios, the man who sailed Disney all the way to some of the highest grossing films of all time, and he's back to surely continue that work right. You know, make loads and loads of money. Wrong. The destruction had only just begun. The 2023 disaster. Disney, like all major studios, flipped from banger to flops like clockwork, but over the course of a year, generally they make enough money to cancel out the bad. But come 2023, they went flop, and floppy they went hard. Now, Disney were hot off the smash hits like Thor Love and Thunder, a film so cringe, even Chris Hemsworth knew it was a bucket of AIDS. Yes, we had too much fun on set, he says. It all became a little too silly. Well, I wish the audience could have joined in that silliness because the resulting diarrhea killed any hopes of furthering that franchise. And they even had Christian Bale, one of the greatest actors of his generation, and they completely fucking wasted him. So they were gonna have to make 2023 really special. Get the audience back on Disney's side. Show them that they are listening to the valid criticisms from disgruntled fans. And end the ideological warfare. Maybe make adjustments to regain the trust of the paying customer. A very simple task, not hard to do at all. Just hire competent people. Yeah, like fuck they did that. So they get it going by releasing Ant-Man Quantumania, the film starring Mr. Potato Head, and damn it, who could have guessed this one? A genius female of power engineer who's also an activist and lectures the audience on social justice issues. And that lost them almost $80 million. Then, they remake The Little Mermaid, the one where they took a clearly defined character and completely fucked with it instead of just coming up with something new. Then proceeded to label anyone who took issue with the blatant pandering as dirty, dirty racists. And that lost them $116 million. What about Indiana Jones though? A film franchise loved by many, a legacy for the ages, something still watched even to this day. Well, it turns out Indiana Jones, the hero of the films, was in fact now a grumpy old man without hope, and was continuously outshone by a female of power who ends up punching him in the face and claims thievery is capitalism, even though capitalism is literally the free exchange of goods and services at a negotiated price. Smells like pure commie gobbledygook to me. Oh, and also, the bad guy literally gets hit in the face by a stationary metal pole while on top of a speeding train, and somehow survives it without any lasting ouchies. Yeah, suspension of disbelief my fucking ass. $214 million lost on that one. Kind of getting desperate now, right? I mean, that's looking floppier than a gigolo turning up for a gig at a fat activist's house. But never fear, audience, when Disney go down in the dumps, there's always one thing that can pull them out of it. A classic animated film, the staple of their brand. So they get releasing Wish, a film about a female of power who discovers the king doesn't grant everybody's wishes, because come on now, that would be insane and lead to severe social issues, but according to Disney, that makes him the bad guy, so the female of power defeats him because of bigotry or something, and then literally no one cared, but Disney did because that lost them $235 million. Okay, so if that didn't work, surely the Marvels would turn their fortunes, right? Because all those women love cats, and they cannot get enough of poorly defined antagonists of power who can't act to save their fucking life. Oh, and then a bunch of screeching women too. $259 million lost on that one, and it was all the audience's fault for being dirty homo-racistophobes. 2023 was a year of utter disaster. The only box office release that was in any way successful was Guardians of the Galaxy, a film series that is just fun to watch because, well, Chris Pratt owns his roles, and he just seems like a genuine nice guy. But that small victory would not save them from losing almost $1.4 billion. And on their streaming service, it wasn't going well either. They had done goofed up big time, so they get releasing The Mandalorian Season 3, starring Jack Black and Lizzo. Then Secret Invasion, a show where the legacy male character is now, surprise surprise, a grumpy old man without hope. Then Ahsoka, a show so poorly written, it actually got me monetized on YouTube. And finally, Loki Season 2, the show everyone forgot to watch. So Disney start paying the shills to run propaganda pieces on prospective customers. These shows were the greatest television we have ever released. Everyone is watching it big time, and if you don't, you're a loser. But it was all too late. The people were starting to bail after years of utter shite that was being driven by unhinged hatred towards males for literally no reason. And the investors within Disney knew the game was up. The success of Disney Plus was about as real as the modern female athlete, and their shows were about as popular as James Corden. Poor shareholders. All that money they fronted for the modern audience, and it never got the returns they expected. So began the lawsuits, claiming that the two Bobs lied their asses off and things aren't going as well as they claim they are. The graphite is indeed on the roof. And all this SpaghettiOs was made worse by the fact their little star of the upcoming Snow White live-action remake that Disney need to make money on was telling everyone on the planet how much she thought the original legendary story that put Disney on the map was nothing more than a sick bucket of dirty misogyny and hate crimes. And all those dwarf actors are disgusting and must be fully grown diverse rainbow inclusion officers because that's what the modern audience was asking for. But let's just pause right there. Rachel Zegler does come across as an insufferable asswipe, the typical high-pitched reel of a narcissist. But was it all her fault? Were those opinions that of the employee and not the employer? Well, probably not, as actors are told by studios what to focus on during interviews, what to say, and how they should advertise the movie. Pretty normal thing to do. Actors have been doing it for years. Unless you're Robert Pattinson. He fucking hated Twilight and his interviews were hilarious. And so her verbal diarrhea continued, and the resulting backlash from the on-set photos that Disney denied was real, but it turned out it was, so they had to backtrack publicly, and that caused Disney to put the brakes on that project and delay their precious little money grab. It was so humiliating, and now they have CGI dwarves so they don't have to pay real ones. All because Peter Dinklage pulled up that ladder by whinging of typecasting. Disney learns nothing. So it comes to early 2024, a time where everyone saw what happened to Bud Light the previous year and had time to reflect. Maybe, just maybe, we're going a little too hard with political messaging against consumers who pay our wages. We should consider just selling products and maybe let people decide their political views and morals without our interference, because after all, we are just a brand. And then everyone on Earth agreed. Let's all be friends again, let's all hold hands, and across the horizon rose the sun. Yeah, like fuck, that's what happened. Every company was gearing up to go even harder at the social engineering of a modern audience that doesn't yet exist. And Disney were no exception. Now, Disney were just off the back of two rather interesting incidents. One being the complete humiliation by South Park, who finally got the casual viewer to realise just how fucking lame Disney are these days. And the other from an African American that they could not minimalise on their promotional posters. Elon Musk, who, unrelated to Disney, had a little bit of an incident on the interwebs where certain groups were trying to rally the ESG simps to boycott advertisements on X, formerly known as Twitter, because of spicy internet boys posting things on the platform. And that pissed off African man. So when a tweet came through claiming that there are Jewish groups spewing vitriol towards white people based entirely on their race, Elon Musk agreed, and that caused a massive SpaghettiOs. And yeah, that does run bad optics. But surprisingly, there was some truth to that. Like the Anti-Defamation League, who was set up to fight against anti-Semitism, which is totally cool, let's not be dicks towards each other. But over time, it morphed to straight up running hate campaigns against white people. Don't like violent commies? You're a white supremacist! Like Pepe the Internet Frogman? You're a dirty, dirty white supremacist. Want to tell your mate that you're doing absolutely fine? You're committing literal hate crimes. You're letting a former US president back on the social media even though murderous dictators are allowed to freely hold accounts? It's literally killing democracy to death. kind of funny but also cringe when coming from grown adults, especially when they define racism as the marginalization or oppression of people of color based on socially constructed racial hierarchies that privileges white people. Yes, white people again. Always fucking white people. It's utterly terrible to be born with less melanin than other people. But not to worry, as that was in fact their old definition, as they had to suddenly change that after Whoopi Goldberg said the Holocaust wasn't about race, it was just about two groups of white people fighting each other. And since she had melanin in her skin, they changed it to racism occurs when individuals or institutions show more favorable evaluation or treatment of an individual or group based on race or ethnicity. Okay, so how does that relate to Disney? Well, the ADL were accusing the Musk man of allowing buckets of anti-Semitism on his platform because things were getting a bit spicy in the Middle East. Yeah, and also on the streets of London too, but if you called that one out, then somehow you're a far-right extremist and you'll get arrested by the Stasi. So you're pretty much fucked either way. It's better just not to say anything at all. Oh, you're fucked doing that too. Anyway, that resulted in the ADL leading advertiser boycotts against Twitter, even though the ADL were more than happy to advertise when child exploitation content was actively ignored by the former Twitter owners. So come the end of November at the Book Deal Summit, after Disney was one of those companies to boycott X and help lead the charge to defund the African American, Elon Musk told them all to go fuck themselves and specifically called out Bob Iger by name. And that led to the reverse boycott, where the internet men stood up, called themselves Spartacus, and began cancelling their Disney Plus subscriptions en masse. Now, it is not known for a fact whether that made much of a difference, but Disney did lose a whopping 1.3 million subscribers over the course of those months. And here we come to 2024. Disney were planning something special. They were going to win all the monies finally by releasing their best show to date, Echo. And since this was going to be the best show ever made in literal history, Disney also decided they'll do the most effective marketing method known to man, which was the Amazon Rings of Power superfan advertisement method, where they got a bunch of people they've paid money to read scripts the show writers wrote and tell the audience just how great it is to see a one-legged deaf chick who's also a Native American on a TV show, instead of actually talking about the storyline. So January the 9th hits and the world was waiting. It had come, the Disney Marvel Echo show. It would be so good, so well written, it would set a new course in television history. And then it was released to global celebrations. Oh, how the people came together. The wars that raged across the Middle East ceased and Russia shook the hands of Ukraine. Finally, peace on Earth. All because Disney made a show about a deaf chick with one leg. When it was either that or the show was so disastrous, millions of people died of cringe. And even I, there's review crap writing, tried doing my own review of episode 1, but was so confused by what the fuck was going on, I had to go investigate on what the story was, and it turned out the whole thing was just a flashback of what happened in Hawkeye, which was a show I never watched. So my review would have been dead on arrival, it would have been completely useless because I had no idea what was happening. But Disney weren't about to let a flop go to waste and began telling the media, "Oh yeah, this show is well popular, mates. Everyone loves it, you should all sign up to Disney Plus, and we're totally not lying or getting sued by shareholders for fluffing numbers." And talking of lawsuits, remember how Disney fired Gina Carano for having wrongthink, and Disney had started a war with the African American man? Well, that came to bite them in the ass, as Gina just got to suing Disney for unfair dismissal for not supporting the current thing on the internet. And it's all being funded by Elon Musk, the walking, talking hate crime. And so the A's train continued. Even off the back of 2023, Disney learned fucking nothing and are going to do it all over again. Yes, more females of power with no montages. More diversity bingo tickets for the sake of diversity instead of just writing a story that just so happens to be diverse. More activist writers. More ESG, and more tax breaks from the Florida government to fund it. Oops, wait, that was actually a little bit of the old fake news, because they lost that court case against the Florida man. Now, let's just get real for a moment. Disney are systematically destroying their brand, but will they end up failing and going bankrupt for their utter incompetence? Will they die to death? Probably not. Their back catalogue is strong and they have an army of shills at their disposal. However, it will come to a point where the company will have to begin downsizing by shedding assets and staff to balance the books while battling lawsuits for lying to their shareholders who are currently building towards a mass revolt against the weatherman. Hell, even the African American may one day buy into the company and there will never be a minimalized black person again. Who knows? But what Disney can do for now is go fuck themselves, the intersectional racist hacks. Big shout out to my Patreon boys and guys, Stephen P, Taylor J, Bill Blake, Andy Ward, ConspiracyQuery.net, the wonderful Mr. Wolf, Hetzer J, and of course, the Mighty Pen.
Subscribe button.
It's always right.